still does not have a head baseball coach. We are sitting here waiting in the wings, waiting to find out who is going to be the next leader of this program. And there's been a lot of rumors, but not a lot of facts as we work towards this program getting a new head man. And, we're just kind of waiting as super regionals wrap up at the end of this weekend, seeing which teams are still in play, which obviously there are a lot of rumored candidates who are still going and will be going to Omaha now as the tournament proceeds. But let's just kind of take a look at what we're working with here. A lot of the names that we've heard over the last couple of weeks and kind of what we think as this search enters another new week. And we wonder why South Carolina still does not have a new head coach. So, of course, the name that's been at the top of the list this entire time over the past several weeks, Kevin Schnall from Coastal Carolina. This, I feel like, has been the name that has been all over this job since it kind of began once they let go of Monty Lee and his staff several weeks ago. And, at this point, it's really not making a whole lot of sense. If Schnall was going to be the guy, Coastal was knocked out last weekend in the Tallahassee Regional. So they have been back home in Conway for the whole past week. And Schnall has been available. So a lot of questions surrounding what's going on there. And then there's been a whole bunch of other names that we've seen swirling around this job over the past several weeks. Dan Fitzgerald from Kansas, Scott Forbes at North Carolina, Skylar Meade from Troy, and Steve Sabins from West Virginia. And 3 out of those 4 names are advancing to Omaha. So guys, a lot of things that I just threw at you, a lot of names. Just how are we feeling as this coaching search enters another new week? And I still feel like we know exactly what we knew this time a week ago. Caroline?
Yeah, Julia, it's super interesting, because it kind of makes you wonder, especially to your point where Schnall has basically been on the market now without his team playing for a week or so. It makes you wonder, like, what is the holdup in those conversations if that is their main target? What is actually going on in those conversations? Is it about money? Is it about other offers that he might have on the table? Is it about Coastal Carolina's offering him a bag to come back? I mean, those are all things that we don't know, just me sitting here speculating, but it kind of makes you think, like, what is kind of the hesitation there? Are you waiting to see which of these other candidates takes their team the farthest when they get to Omaha? Are you waiting for Kansas to be done so that you can go after head coach Dan Fitzgerald? I mean, not my Jayhawks. Love Dan Fitzgerald, but what's going on in those conversations that's making them hold up if it seems like Schnall is the guy? Because, as you mentioned, it seems like he's been a front runner since Monty Lee was let go, but I feel like there were rumors kind of floating around before even that happened, kind of right after Paul Maneri left. People are like, oh, who are they bringing in? Like, Schnall's a big name. Like, that's stuff that's been floating around on social media as well. So it definitely kind of poses some questions for those on the outside looking in of what is really going on here and what exactly is South Carolina looking for, Bronwyn?
Yeah, that's really the question, right? Why is it taking this long? I think probably South Carolina fans feel that more than anybody as we head into the start of June, as we're getting closer to, I'm sure, some recruiting needs to be going on, and South Carolina is kind of stuck, or so it seems. Maybe there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Maybe Kevin Schnall is a red herring and they've actually already gotten their guy. Obviously, that is speculation. Just a guess, because like you guys both said, what is taking so long? If Schnall is your guy, what's the holdup? And so then my next question is, if it's not Schnall, Julia, do you have a guy that you kind of want to be the front runner or think would be a good fit at South Carolina?
I feel like the most obvious guy outside of that a lot of people have been talking about now is Scott Forbes with North Carolina, but now the Tar Heels are going to Omaha. So that brings the same question of, how long do you wait for somebody? Because you've seen time and times again with different sports, different programs. If you wait too long, your guy's either going to do too well, which you run the risk of when they go to Omaha. Like, what if North Carolina goes and wins the national championship? They're sure as heck not letting go of Scott Forbes in that instance, or even if he makes a deep run. So I think he would be the next guy up in this group of names, because you're also running into an issue of now I would expect that Dan Fitzgerald will likely get an extension at Kansas. I would expect Steve Sabins to get a hefty extension at West Virginia for what he's doing with the Mountaineers. So once again, all of this timing, I just don't really understand what Jeremiah Donati's approach is to this at this point, because it feels like the longer you wait, the less options you are ultimately going to end up having because of how successful these teams are. And, on one hand, you're weighing, okay, a team's success correlates to how good their coach is. You want to go after the good coach, but their own program is going to fight tooth and nail to keep them where they are now. So that's kind of where I stand with all of this is, as we've said the last couple of minutes here, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Obviously, they do have some sort of game plan. It's not like they're just floundering in the wind, but it's just very, very odd, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a game of chess, but if you wait too long to make your move, then your move that you want might not be there anymore. So it's going to be interesting for us to keep paying attention to that and see what they end up doing. Hopefully, maybe we'll have something to talk about on that front here coming up in the next couple of weeks. But speaking of things to talk about on the diamond, guys, we have got to talk about the Atlanta Braves. This team is on an absolute ridiculous run to open the season. I mean, I say open the season, we're about getting close to the halfway mark here. But this team is 45-21 so far. The closest team to them in the MLB is the Dodgers, who have 42 wins. So the Braves are leading the entire league in wins and win percentage, and they are on pace. I'm not very good at math, but they're on pace to win over 100 games, getting back into triple digits. And this team went 76-86 last season and missed the postseason for the first time since 2017. So the turnaround just literally in like 8 months has been absolutely absurd. They smoked the Pirates over the weekend. They swept them. They're now 18-2-1 in series after this weekend. And the stats just, I mean, we could literally just keep throwing them out all day long. Their pitching staff leads the entire league in terms of wins. They are second in lowest ERA in the MLB. The offense is second in home runs behind only the New York Yankees. They lead the league in RBI. I mean, the list just goes on. This team is absolutely firing on all cylinders. Bronwyn, I just want to ask you, what do you think is the major thing contributing to that turnaround from last season to this season for the Braves? I know Walt Weiss is the new manager, but I mean, it's not like Snicker didn't have a good thing going while he was there over the last several years as well. So what do you think is really contributing to just this full-on 180 between last season and this season for the Braves?
I mean, I think it's something I read an article earlier today, and it was talking about the Braves know what it's like to have a season like last season where you're missing the postseason, where you get close, but you're not close enough to do it. And so they have their foot on the gas. I want to pull up some interesting stats. You mentioned a couple of them, but the best record in the MLB, tied with the 2003 and 1998 teams for the best 66-game start in modern franchise history. Both of those teams went on to win division titles in over 100 games. The 1998 team finished with the most wins in franchise history with 106. And Caroline mentioned this, but if the current winning percentage holds, they're going to beat that. That would be 110 wins. And then based on total runs scored, they're on pace to finish with 844 runs. Only 4 teams for the Atlanta Braves have scored more than that. As you mentioned, Braves are tied with the LA Dodgers for the most homers in the National League. They are firing on all cylinders. It's exciting. It's fun. Let's continue it, right? I want to have a good Atlanta Braves team to root for my first season covering them in the Low Country, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's been fun to watch, I mean, baseball is one of those things where when it's fun, it's really fun, and also when it's contagious, it's contagious. So when a team like this is playing well, in all phases, the pitching's got it going on, the guys at the plate got it going on. Walt Weiss clearly has command of what's going on. It's pretty fun. It's shaping up to be a special season. We'll hope that holds as we get into the back half of the year here. But we're going to take a quick break here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We're going to talk a little hockey with you guys this afternoon because, of course, the Stanley Cup Final is going on. The Carolina Hurricanes playing on this stage for the first time in quite a long time, but they currently trail the Vegas Knights 2-1 in the series. But every single game in this series has been a great watch. If you guys tuned in on Saturday night, you know exactly what I was talking about. The Knights ended up winning this game in overtime, but I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, I was paying attention to the game because I was trying to go out and put it in my sportscast that night, and the Canes were trailing 4-0. And I was like, okay, well, it's not going to be over by the time I need to have it in the show. So I'm just going to, get a game update in there. And then about 5 minutes later, I come back to make sure that the game was still 4-0. And it's in the third period, and all of a sudden the Canes have made it 4-3. I mean, scoring all of their goals in just rapid succession. They score the fourth one, push it to overtime, and then, of course, end in a devastating way in overtime. Julia, I cannot believe the way that that game ended and the way that that final goal went in for the Knights. I mean, that was just a heartbreaker for the Canes after fighting back in such a crazy game like that.
And what more can we ask for in, this season of life, in that referencing the NHL and NBA finals going on at the same time? Can't ask for anything more than good games. And that's all we've gotten over the last few games in both series. But yeah, no, just a devastating way to go out. But I do want to bring up an interesting point that producer Nick slid my way before this show. Because not all is lost for the Canes. It's only 2-1, so, lots more hockey to be played. But he wanted to draw up an interesting parallel that he heard to the 2006 Stanley Cup Final. He's in my ear, so if I get anything wrong, he'll correct me. But the Canes trailing in Game 3, 2006, just as they have in 2026. They make a switch with the goalie. Cam Ward comes in. The Canes tie the game up. Sounds familiar, does it not? And then, ultimately, devastatingly, they lose 5-4 in overtime. But if anybody's a hockey fan, they go on to win the Stanley Cup after that goalie switch and the way those games all panned out. So, if anybody is, interested in this sort of thing, when everybody draws up all these different parallels of, the last time this happened, oh, this occurred, and so that should happen this time. All things are pointing toward the Canes still winning this Stanley Cup Final. So I will be really curious to see if a lot of these things do line up once more, because it is always interesting when people, do all of this digging and this research to find out, how things are lining up. So just what do you guys think about that? Do you think it'll be similar to 2006? It's only 20 years removed.
Only 20. That's not very much. I mean, I always favor, and it might just be the hockey fan in me, and it's just like the fandom in me in general, but I'm always going to favor, if you're going down, if you're down a couple games in a series, or even if you're down one game. I mean, every single game in this series has been insanely close. I always say switch out the goalies. I think every time it happens, it seems like it works in a final. I'm talking about the Stingrays this season too. They did that. They bring in Seth Isley. I think it was about halfway through the playoffs, and he shut down what was a very dominating Florida Everblades team. Now, they did go down. I know the Rays went down, but for a couple of games, Seth Isley was a brick wall. So I think switching goalies is always a good move. I think it can bring a new level of, for lack of a better word, defense to the team, right? To the goal. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if it plays out the same way. But Vegas is dominating. Just a really interesting stat to me. Mitch Marner had the fastest hat trick in Stanley Cup Final history the other night. And then now we're going back to Vegas tomorrow for Game 4. I mean, if you don't watch this, I think you're missing what could be just chef's kiss of a Stanley Cup Final history that will be talked about for years to come.
Yeah, it's definitely been a fun watch, and you never know. I mean, history could repeat itself. Sports kind of end up being weird in those ways sometime. Like, I was thinking back to when we were talking about the Panthers going on this run that they went on over the fall, and like we had this running joke in our sports department because there was some conspiracy theory going around that the last like 2 times the Panthers made the Super Bowl. It was in a year that J-Lo got divorced, and then in a year that the Panthers opened the regular season with the Jaguars. And then this year, J-Lo got divorced, and they opened the season with the Jaguars, and they made the playoffs. They didn't make it to the Super Bowl, but they broke like a 9-year playoff drought. So I don't know. Sometimes the stars end up aligning in a funny way like that. We'll see if it works out here for the Canes. I don't know about J-Lo, but anyways, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with you.
She's trending again.
Hey.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We're going to start with a little golf, okay? But there's going to be a really easy segue into football, so just hang with me. Earlier today, I was in Kiowa, beautiful Kiowa Island. Greg Olson hosting his 5th annual Hardest Yard Celebrity Classic. This one presented by Lexus at Kiowa Islands Club Cacique. Gorgeous, let me tell you. Since its start in 2022, they've raised $1.2 million to the Hardest Yard, the Pediatric Cardiovascular Foundation, founded by Greg and Kara on behalf of their son, TJ, who actually just celebrated his 5th transplant anniversary, if I'm remembering that correctly from this morning. They're supporting families of children with congenital heart disease treated at NUSC John Jenkins Children's Hospital. And, of course, former Carolina Panthers. There he is, Luke Kuechly. A couple of teammates were there, and Greg Olson, you know I had to ask him about his Panthers and how he thinks they're going to do this year.
I'm excited for Carolina. I think they're going to have a great year. I really like the job that Dave Canales and Dan Morgan have done, both in the free agency and the draft, continuing to build a young, talented roster. And last year was a lot of fun. I got to call that playoff game. They fell just short there in the wild card round, but it was a fun year. It was nice to see the city back alive with the Panthers, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come.
Just a really, really great event. It was so sweet to see all of the teammates together again. And like you said, Luke Kuechly has not missed. He's pretty sure hasn't missed a single one of these. This is the 5th annual. He hasn't missed one. And so I love that. But let's talk a little Panthers mandatory mini camp. Caroline starts tomorrow, right?
Yeah, yep. Starts tomorrow, runs through Thursday. And to Greg Olson's point there, Dave Canales and Dan Morgan done quite a bit of work over the offseason to get this team in a spot that they feel comfortable with as they head into year 3 under head coach Dave Canales. Ella Grogan and myself were out there at OTAs last week, which were voluntary, remember? So it's kind of interesting to see who was there, who wasn't. Coming up this week, really putting the mandatory in mini camp. That means everybody's got to be out there. But something interesting that Coach Canales was talking about as he heads into year 3 is kind of what his approach is from an offensive perspective. I mean, that's really been an area of this team that's been under the microscope, especially with the progression of Bryce Young over the course of his career in the pros so far. And that's really, for me, one of the things to watch as we get into mini camp and as the offseason continues on. Dave Canales saying that it's not so much about like what he's able to do himself, but it's more so about like what the guys are able to handle in the offense. And so he's kind of like approaching it as stacking things on top of each other from year to year, which kind of sounds like school, you know? It's like you build on last season, that season built on the year before, you're kind of putting it all together. I'll let head coach Dave Canales explain kind of where he feels like things are at, because I thought it was pretty interesting to think about the offense in that way.
The amount of the scope of our offense and what our guys can handle, having been in the system for 2 years now, we can handle more. And so we're throwing a little bit more at the guys, offensively speaking, you know, from different pass concepts to different runs and play actions, ways that we can open up our offense down the field, horizontally, RPOs, whatever, you name it. Bryce has a great command of what we're doing right now. And so he's able to communicate that also to the players and really refine what he's looking for. So I think it's less about, you know, necessarily what I can see and what we're doing, but more what the guys can handle, and we're able to push the envelope. And that's also on defense and special teams. It's like there's a lot of this in meetings, like, okay, guys, so you know this one. All right, here's the counter to that. Here's what we're going to try today. So we're starting to build layers of our offense, defense, and special teams.
Well, Coach mentioned all three phases, but specifically talking about Bryce Young, going to be a huge year for the Panthers QB1 coming off his most productive season in the pros up to this point. Got some new weapons to play around with on the offense. The Panthers drafting Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee. They bring in John Mechie, who was his teammate, Bryce's teammate back at Alabama. They're getting Jonathan Brooks back up to speed, who had a season-ending injury last year. He's expected to share the backfield with Chuba Hubbard. Tataroa McMillan has been kind of nursing an injury allegedly throughout the course of the offseason, so we'll see what his reps are like at minicamp coming up this week. But a lot of newness, but also seems like a lot of continuity as the Panthers move into this year 3 under Dave. Julia?
The first Bryce Young to John Mechie pass might, just change my life, because that was my era in college. I remember watching those guys very well. So that's super cool. But honestly, the most standout story to me on the offense is Jonathan Brooks's recovery, because, he's entering year 3 with this offense, but he's not been able to play more than 3 games in his career. And he spent most of the last couple years just on the sideline. Of course, he was on the PUP list last year. So it's been great to see how he's been improving. And then I know he talked to media the other day and just had a great attitude towards everything. And something that stuck out to me was the fact that he hasn't been comparing his recovery to the recovery of anybody else at his position or anyone else. So it seems like he's had a very individual approach to this, and, just really wants to do great things for the Panthers, despite this being, the first offseason that he's really been able to lock in on things.
All right, guys, we're going to head to break real quick. We'll be talking a little more ball with you when we come back in just a few minutes. All right, guys, welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. Real quick before we go, we had the Corn Ferry Tour make a stop right here in Greenville, the BMW Charity Pro-Am tournament over the weekend. There were celebs out there. Of course, Ben Coles is the professional winner who takes home the crown this time around. There were also a couple Clemson guys, Gamecock, who were in the field as well. We'll be looking forward to hearing from some of those guys as the rest of the week goes on. But for now, thanks so much for joining us on this lovely Monday. We hope to see you back tomorrow and the rest of the week.